Okay, I believe we're on YouTube now. If I could ask Mark, okay, perfect, Mark, if you could just copy paste that link in the chat. Okay, sorry about that. Oliver, you were gonna say something? Okay,
No,
perfect. Okay. All right, so we're moving along. Okay, so if we could ask that, these are the workshop rules. If we could ask everyone to pay attention, that in this space tonight, we're asking that everybody use the term Caribbean Canadian. We have zero tolerance for hate, political, religious, or racial debates. We want everyone to help us foster a confidential, respectful, compassionate, and non-judgmental safe space. Please use the drop down in the chat to send a private message to our moderator, who is Oliver. In case there's a technical difficulty on your end, you'll go in the chat and you'll press the little arrow and find his name so it goes directly to him as opposed to everybody. Number 5, kindly limit your comments to 2 minutes if you're verbally doing your response, and that is to allow for other participants to share as well. Continue to read and send comments and questions in the chat box. And number 7, turn off your camera if you need to step away, because we've all heard those stories, right? We don't want those stories happening tonight. Okay, so we continue. Okay, now let me just start with a quick concept here. And I'm asking Mark to put up the, the first poll, number 1. The first poll. In a minute, you're going to see a poll show up on your screen. The first one's asking you, do you self-identify as Caribbean Canadian? And number 2, are you considering becoming a member of one of these organizations? If you could kindly fill out those 2 questions, we'll wait maybe a minute, and then we're going to poll number 2, Mark. So Mark, as soon as it hits a minute, we'll stop it. Good to go. So we're continuing on to poll number 2. I think you have to maybe exit to get to poll number 2. There we go. Self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a theory in sociology and psychology, because that is literally the basis for this workshop. Are you knowledgeable on the self-fulfilling policy theory? Yes or no? And don't check your phone. You can't use your phone, eh? You can't call a friend. You can't check Google. And you're not being tested. There's no right or wrong. This is just, for background research, right? Are you knowledgeable on the self-fulfilling prophecy theory? And we're going through it anyway after this screen. So we're just waiting, Mark, until the 1 minute, and then we'll go on in the slideshow. Okay, perfect. Thank you for your responses so far. There's going to be 2 more polls coming up throughout the evening. Let me just close this. Okay, so we're moving on now. Let's talk a little bit about that, because it has a lot to do with our identity. So it's a theory. I'm going to play a short video that it briefly explains it, but I have some bullet points here as well. There are 2 different parts to this self-fulfilling prophecies. There's the psychology part of it, and there's the sociology part of it. May I have a volunteer to read the 4 points on the screen. You can type a happy face or an emoji, or you can type the number 1 in the Zoom chat, and Oliver will unmute. Any volunteers? We're just reading the 4 points on the screen. Thank you. I think it's Ingrid, or maybe Ingrid's husband. Oh, Ingrid or Joe. Okay.
Ingrid or Joe?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had their hand up.
Okay, number 1, the impact of our beliefs and expectations on outcomes, particularly when we are convinced that our predictions will manifest, even when we aren't aware that we hold the expectation. The placebo effect refers to the improvements in outcomes measured in subjects of scientific studies or clinical trials, even when the participants did not receive any meaningful treatment. The participants' belief affects the treatment that they experience. Interpersonal processes, example, an individual's belief affects his or her own behavior.
Now is it starting to ring a bell? You probably didn't know the term, but have you heard placebo effect? Where, right, where they think they're getting healed by this pill, meanwhile it's only water in the capsule? Or have you heard that whatever you believe affects your behaviors? Right, so that's the term for it, is self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'm going to play a short clip that further explains it.
We all have thoughts, and everything you've done from your birth to this moment is based on a thought. Everything you say requires a thought, and the way people react to us, interact with us, and affect and talk to us create our thoughts. And these thoughts are what control us.
One sec, Oliver, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I'm seeing the screen.
Okay, because Candy was saying something about she couldn't see something.
Yes, I couldn't see the actual video.
It's this diagram here with the arrows.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
That's all
what
it
it
is.
was. Okay,
Yes, that's all it is. Sorry, I should have said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see, feelings are just a series of thoughts which are processed and developed into feelings. Over time, these feelings create your belief system, which includes your feeling about who you are and what your place is in the world. These feelings can manifest themselves negatively or positively, depending on the thoughts that shape them. Now, our beliefs and feelings are what determine our actions. We tend to act consistently with the beliefs that we have developed over time. This happens whether the feeling or belief is true or not. We often refer to our actions as behavior. For instance, because I believe or feel a certain way, then I must behave in a way that supports that belief. Of course, these actions will determine our results. Because you act in a certain way, you produce the results that you do. These results are what we also call our experiences. And over time, we build up a series of experiences which are then processed and developed into new thoughts, and so the cycle is complete. So, thoughts literally shape and create our experience of life. They can be our greatest friend or our worst enemy. Now, let me illustrate what I mean by using a simple example. A person that falls off a bike begins to think that it may happen again. They begin to feel that they don't have the skills required to ride a bike and that it's dangerous. And when they do ride a bike again, they are very nervous and, of course, quite unstable. So the result is that they fall off the bike again, which supports the original thought processes. As you can see, the process can be positive and also very destructive. Where we have built up a strong mindset around a topic, the process can be very difficult to break down and change. Either way, it is still a self-fulfilling. I'm your host, Hazel Ann LaFortune. I'm an author.
Okay, I just want to get a read on what the participants just heard. Did you learn something new? Did you already know this? What are your thoughts as far as it? Is it true? Do you believe that? Does it make sense? Have you heard it before? I just want to get a reading from the participants. So just anyone who would like to share, you would just click the emoji. And Oliver will unmute. Does anybody disagree with this theory? Let's start there. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, you can, Mark.
I don't disagree with the theory. I think, I mean, it's pretty much happened to me before. You know, you're kind of walking. When I was younger, maybe, well, not maybe, I was a little bit more self-conscious of myself. So if I'm walking down the street and there's a group of people standing there and kind of looking at you, and you think, whoa, I'm going to trip as I'm walking. And then all of a sudden you kind of trip over the sidewalk, right? Like those kinds of things to me are real, and it happens. So, you know, in different circumstances, as people, you know, have thoughts and feelings in their minds of that's some of the self-fulfilling prophecy that actually happens.
Right, so perfect. Anybody else? Oliver, what about in the comments? Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, so Jer typed in similar to law of attraction, exactly what Mark just described. What you think is what you believe and what you attract. Well, thanks, Jer. That's it in the chat, Camille.
I thought I saw from Candy too, no?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Candy. This is true. Our feelings can literally manifest our outcomes if we allow it to. Exactly.
Okay, so we do have some control over our own outcomes. It's not out of our hands, right? Okay, so we're moving on. Thank you for the feedback.
I think you're speaking on mute, Camille.
Still can't hear me?
Can hear you now.
Oh, I was saying that if you're not comfortable and you want to, if something else comes up that you want to share, you can type it in the chat and we'll read it out.
Educator and
Okay, still sticking with the self-fulfilling prophecy, but this time there's another angle. It's from the perspective of sociology, right? So in other words, how others affect our actions. So the first one was how we affect our own behavior. Now this is talking about how other people affect our behavior. Okay, may I have a volunteer to read the 4 bullet points? So just a reaction button or the number 1 in the chat box.
So Beverly in the chat. Sorry,
Beverly.
so Beverly beat you. So Beverly, go ahead. Hold on, let me, can you mute yourself? I'll mute you. Unmute you. Try to unmute yourself, Beverly. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. A false definition of the situation, evoking a new behavior which makes the originally false conception come true. A belief brings about consequences that cause reality to match the belief. Generally, those at the center of a self-fulfilling prophecy don't understand that their beliefs cause the consequences they expected or feared. It's often unintentional, unlike self-motivation or self-confidence. Interpersonal process, example, individual's belief affects another's behavior.
Yes, thank you, Beverly. Okay, so I'm gonna play a short clip that again further expands on what Beverly just read. Hang tight, you're in the right place, eh? I'm going somewhere with this. So hang tight, but it's important that we understand the background because it's a big deal. Identity comes from it's not just you wake up one day and you know who you are, right? There's processes that go on. All right, so hang tight, I'm gonna play this video and I'm gonna ask for your feedback on what you just heard from Beverly and from the video.
Hi, welcome to PsychIn, where I will be covering topics in psychology and its everyday application. If you like the content of this channel, don't forget to subscribe and click the like button below. For today's topic, we will be talking about what is self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, some of us might have heard of the term self-fulfilling prophecy, but many of us might not know the impact it can have on the way we perceive individuals and behave towards them. So what exactly is self-fulfilling prophecy? Self-fulfilling prophecy refers to the process by which one person's expectations about another become reality by eliciting behaviors that confirm the expectations. For self-fulfilling prophecy to occur, we need to have a perceiver and a target person. The impression in which the perceiver has of the target will then lead to the perceiver behaving in a certain way that corresponds to the impression. This will then produce the corresponding behavior elicited from the target. The behaviors of the target person will then confirm the impression that the perceiver initially has. In a job interview study conducted by Wood, Zanuck, and Cooper in 1974, some white Confederates were assigned to be the interviewers of white job candidates who are real participants. There were two conditions to the study, where the participants would either be exposed to a good interview or a bad interview. The Confederates were then assigned to either be a good interviewer, where they would appear neutral to the job candidate, or be a bad interviewer, where they were supposed to appear more distant to the job candidate. What the researchers found was that job candidates exposed to the bad interview condition performed much worse, where they were rated as nervous, incompetent, and were more distant in their own behaviors. This showed that the perceiver's behaviors can influence or produce the resultant behaviors in the target person. In another school study, researchers told the teacher that there are two types of students, the bloomers, who are fast learners although this was not true, and the non-bloomers, who are just some normal students. With this expectation in mind, the teacher then gave the bloomers more difficult and challenging questions for practice, while giving simple questions for the rest of the class. It was found that the bloomers performed much better than those who were not bloomers, confirming the teacher's initial expectation. So knowing that self-fulfilling prophecy can affect the way people perceive and behave, what can we do to prevent ourselves from falling prey to self-fulfilling prophecy? Number 1, be confident of who you are. By knowing what kind of person you actually are, it is less likely for the perceiver to hold on to any expectations that are contrary to who you are. Number 2, be aware of the perceiver's expectations. If someone thinks that you're a lazy person who lacks the motivation to achieve, then by realizing this expectation, you can then attempt to disconfirm the belief by showing how diligent you are and how much effort you put into every single project that you're in charge of. In this way, you can change the perceiver's expectation of you. Number 3. Stay true to yourself. Most of the time, people conform to what is expected of them so as to gain social acceptance and connectedness. However, if you are motivated to convey an accurate impression, then it is important for you to be courageous enough to be who you really are. In that way, you will never behave in ways to fit into the expectations of others. Thank you for watching this channel.
Oh, now I'm expecting the emojis to just go crazy on the screen now. What did you hear in that video? What stood out? Anybody, what stood out in that video for you? What made sense? What didn't make sense? Come on, folks. It's a workshop. The operative word meaning work. Thank you. Go ahead, Oliver.
I got two people in the chat
Thank
before we go to Candy.
Yes, thank you.
Georgia said it's all about self-confidence. Rexilla said self-confidence.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the feedback. What about Candy?
Can you mute yourself, Candy?
I was just going to reiterate what they said about the confidence. You have to be ahead of the game and understand who you are so that you don't fall into other one's preconceived notions about who you are and have that form your identity instead.
Right, exactly. Anybody else? Amanda's up.
I think one thing that I really liked that they said was be aware of the perceiver's expectations so that it's an attempt to disconfirm that perception. I think that's a really powerful way of being able to really take control of how other people view you and the things that you put out. I really like that point.
Thank you, Amanda. So I'm hearing that nothing is out of our control when it comes to our behaviors, our actions, how we're perceived. Anything else in the chat, Oliver?
Yes, Jair is saying society sometimes dictate how we become. We confirm to feel a part of society.
Yeah, that one stood out to me too. Thank you, Jay.
Nadia,
Ingrid and Joe. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, Nadia is saying that perception is a reality of changing, or a perspective can change our reality.
Yes, yes. And I think I saw Joe and Ingrid's thumbs up, no? Or that was, yes, I think they wanted to say something, Ingrid? Okay.
Unmute?
Yeah, I can. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. I think the one slide, which is the last, close to the last, and that the one that I think speaks about being your authentic self. Far too often when, and I speak for myself, especially as a police officer, becoming a police officer, there was that need that you feel you needed to confirm or conform and not be kind of a Black individual, for want of a better word. And that was very important to me, to always be authentic. And it's about self-awareness, knowing that as I'm a Black person and I am going to be who I am because that's what I am. And I think for me, that's the part that I like the most.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback. And I hope, thank you for sharing, Ingrid, that you are a police officer. I hope that actually encourages people to participate more on this call. We have a police officer in the building. Okay, so I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm glad you brought it up.
We got one more.
All right, and again, I'm just, yeah, go ahead, Oliver.
Your identity can change due to the environment you are in. Ooh, that's a big
one. That's a good one. Was that Rexella?
Yes.
Yes, that was a good one, Rexella. Yes, absolutely. It's fluid, it can change. Right, so that's perfect. And I remind you here that this presentation is for people who identify as Caribbean Canadian, not necessarily Black, okay? This is a Caribbean Canadian space. All right, so we're moving on. Oh.
And don't forget to...
Okay, so I just put up some images here. Oh, one sec. That's kind of, I guess, from the self-fulfilling prophecy, you'll see how this stuff translates perhaps in sports with visualization. Anybody know about sports and visualization? Anybody care to share what that whole thing is about? Any sports fans here who know about sports visualization? What is that?
Is the Ingrid and Joe?
Okay. Go ahead, Oliver. I think you have to unmute them.
Oh, they're mute. Yeah, they're unmuted.
Okay.
Yes, this is Joe, obviously. I think in athletes, what they do is they try to see, an example would be before you run the race, you actually see yourself running the race from the beginning to the end, through the whole process and how you're going to manage that race.
Okay. So that sounds like self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that what Mark was saying, right? Where he had to tell himself he could do it.
Yeah, I mean,
So he could actually do it. It would improve the outcome. Go ahead, Mark.
it's very big in sports. So that is one thing that, you know, teams, like professional teams, bring in sports psychologists to work with the athletes to do that very thing. And you know, just me playing amateur sports, it's you know, you're playing soccer and you're up there to shoot the penalty shot, and it's just you, the goalie. There's a big wide net. But if you're thinking that you're going to miss, you're definitely going to miss the net, right? If I think, oh man, every time I kick it over the net, it's going straight over the net. But if you're looking at the net and saying, I'm putting it in that corner, that's where you're going to put it.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments, Oliver, in the chat with regards to sports visualization?
No, nothing.
Okay. Okay. What about vision boards? Anybody have any experience with vision boards? What is the whole concept behind the vision board? What's the point of it? Anybody? I think Candy was first. Yes, Candy.
I actually just had my first experience starting a vision board for the first time ever this year. So that was kind of cool. And just the concept of even looking through clippings or art of things that speak to me, things I want to call into my life, that in itself was even inspiring. It was really
And
cool.
what's the reasoning? What's the point of a vision board?
Stay focused. Stay focused on what you want. Stay focused on your goals. It's really hard. There's a lot of things coming at you daily, and it's easy to lose track of what it is you want.
So you're putting the goals on the board.
Yeah.
Whatever goals you have. Got it. Okay. That again sounds like self-fulfilling prophecy to me.
Yeah.
Okay. What about affirmations and gratitude journals? Anybody know the reasoning behind starting a gratitude journal or self-affirmations? You know, that's everybody's got a book about affirmations, one a day for 365. Anybody have one of those books? One affirmation a day. Anybody know the reasoning behind that? Anybody want to share? What is that about?
So Georgia, if you don't mind, can you unmute?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so basically in December, I actually started a gratitude journal. Based on what's going on in the world right now, it's gives me perspective and an understanding to realize that all the craziness that's going on in the outside world, there are things that I am still grateful for. I'm grateful that I got a chance to open my eyes this morning. I'm grateful that I still have my mom with me with all COVID that's going on. She's still with me. So with me writing down everything that I am grateful for, it kind of keeps me calm. It keeps me sane and realize that it's not that bad. A lot of people out there have it worse than I have right now. And I just need to focus on the positives in my life and things that are going good. And once you kind of focus and shift your mindset from the negativity and start focusing on the positive, that's where all your energy is going to be directed. And you're going to start noticing more positive things in your life. And you're going to start moving towards you actually getting, you know, the results that you want. So gratitude journal, I highly recommend it. And anytime I'm feeling down, I just go back and read it. And so, yeah, I do have that to be grateful for.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you for your response. Anybody else, Oliver, in the chat?
Yes, we have Nadia Headley. If you can unmute Or Mark, can you help? Yeah, there you go.
Good night, everyone. I actually
Hello, good night.
I lead affirmations in the mornings on Instagram from Mondays to Fridays, specifically to encourage women who are visionary leaders of nonprofits and in entrepreneurship. They're all I am statements. And so some of the purpose is to call ourselves into where we need to be. We need to become the person that produces the results we want to see in our lives. So not just setting a goal, but actually calling ourselves into being that person. And sometimes it's also to challenge what we believe to be true about ourselves. So for example, this week I said, I am powerful, and I admitted to everybody on Instagram. I wasn't really sure if that was true at the point until we talked about it some more. And then I stopped and I was like, I am powerful. So sometimes it just kind of helps us to check in with ourselves and ask ourselves what those beliefs are that we've accepted to be true. Thank you.
Wow, great response. Clearly you were supposed to be here tonight, Nadia. Clearly. Anybody else? Oliver in the chat?
Yes, I was just responding to Candy at Georgia. If you read that, that is so true what you said earlier, the event that's happening in the world. It is humbling experience to keep a gratitude journal. And also Candy talked about we need to call the positive into our lives. And that's what information is all about. And Lisa is just confirming. It's so very true. We need to appreciate our blessings and simple things in our lives.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you, Oliver, and good catch with Georgia. We want to start hearing all the different voices who are here. Georgia and Nadia, good catch. So you can't just be typing the whole time you're here, okay? So be prepared. Let's continue. Okay, now we're getting into the meat. And I timed it perfect because after this meat, we're going on break for 5 minutes because I wanted to soak in and marinate. Okay, so there is a difference between culture and race. Clear distinction between culture and race. I've only put 3 bullets for each of the 2, but there are more. May I have a volunteer to read just the first row, right? You're comparing the first box for culture, the first box for race. May I have a volunteer to read, please?
I have Rexella.
Yes, thank you, Rexella.
If I could find her. Give me a second, Rexella. I'm just trying to unmute you.
Did something show up on your screen, Rexella, to unmute?
Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Okay, so culture refers to the customs, practices, languages, values, and worldviews that define social groups, such as those based on ethnicity, religion, or common interests. Cultural identity is important for people's sense of self and how they relate to others. And then you want me to read the race, the first part, right?
Yes, please.
Race was generated by massive historical, economic, and political forces that far transcend the level of individual choice.
Thank you, Rexella.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody have any questions with what Rexella just read? Comments? Or are you lost? Any clarification? Everybody still good to go? Maybe a quick emoji, a thumbs up if you're good to go. Because I want to make sure everybody's on this ride with me. Okay, so I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay, across the board. Or don't feel embarrassed or anything like that. If you need clarification, we can. That's why we're here. We're working tonight. Right? So anybody need clarification? Okay. One thing I wanted, the last thing that Rexella just read there, the part about it far transcends the level of individual choice. So up until this point, I've been hearing that it's our choice. Up until this point, when we were talking about self-fulfilling prophecy, all I was hearing is that it's actually in our control. we actually have a choice. We actually bring in the things that we want and don't want based on what we think and what we believe. And now I'm hearing now that race is not our choice. It's somebody else's choice. Okay, now bear with me. Let's go on to the next row. May I have a volunteer to read again the second block, the second row, culture block and race block.
We got Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.
So Shannon, if you can.
Yep. Hi, everyone. All right. So cultural identity is the identity of belonging to a group. It is part of a person's self-conception and self-perception and is related to nationality, ethnicity, religion, social class, generation, locality, or any kind of social group that has its own distinct culture. And then for race, when people define and talk about a particular conception of race, they create a social reality through which social categorization is achieved. In this sense, races are said to be social constructs.
Thank you, Shannon. Did anything stick out with what Shannon just read? Anything notable there for anyone in the chat, Oliver? Keep me posted.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. Nothing
Okay.
for the chat.
For me, it was clear that race was not a part of the description. The description that Shannon just read in the left box under culture: nationality, ethnicity, religion, social class, generation, locality, or any kind of social group that has its own distinct culture. I didn't hear anything about race there. Race is something different from culture. It's separate. Okay, so let's go on to the third row. May I have a volunteer to read?
I just have a question. So
go ahead.
Where it says race, in this sense, races are said to be a social constructs. What does that mean exactly?
That's in the next box, Mark. Actually, okay, let's leave it to somebody else to read it. If nobody reads it, then I'll ask Mark to read it. Can we have a volunteer to read the last row? Both blocks?
Mark just volunteered.
Of course he did. Thank you, Mark. Yes,
okay.
Take it away. The floor is yours.
All right, so under culture, identity is the fact of being who or what a person, Identity is the fact of being who or what a person.
Sorry, it's a typo. There's supposed to be is at the end. What a person is. Okay. Sorry.
So identity is the fact of being who or what a person is. And then under race, a social construct refers to something that does not have a basis in the natural world, but is an artificial distinction created by humans.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you for following the rules by putting up your thumbs up emoji to participate. And now I want to hear what everybody else heard from what Mark just said there. Was that something new you just heard, or did you already know this stuff? Is all this stuff just a walk in the park, or is this new information? I want to hear, because this is a big deal. It's a big deal. One is fact, one is artificial.
Shannon is saying that she knew this from before.
Awesome. Anybody else? Anybody else? Thumbs up if you knew this before, other than Shannon. Anybody else knew this before?
Beverly is saying that this is new to her.
Okay, thank you, Beverly.
And we have, I'm not sure if it was Chelsea. Let's go to Chelsea first. She have her thumbs up. So Mark,
Yes.
you know, mute Chelsea, or Chelsea, mute yourself.
No, I think I had, okay, go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, no, I was just going to comment that, yeah, I learned about this concept of a social construct in university during one of our classes for social development. And I think it's a really important concept that a lot of people need to realize, is that it is an artificial thing that is made up through society. It's not something that is very tangible.
Thank you, Chelsea. Something in the chat box, Oliver?
Let me go to Candy first before chat box, because Candy
Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah.
I was just saying that I didn't know the exact difference between the two, but I knew that there was a difference to an extent. I just didn't know like the exact definition of what each one was.
Thank you, Candy.
So in the chat, Georgia said, yes, she did, knew this before. Ingrid and Joe heard it before. Lisa, new to her. Candy, I didn't know exactly the difference, but just what she just said.
Yeah.
Nadia knew it before. Rexella heard before.
Perfect. Thank you. So if we know that culture is fact and race is artificial, doesn't it beg the question, why are we using race? Why is race a part of the conversation? Why are we identifying with race? Why are we identifying others with race, knowing very well that race is not real? It's like a unicorn. It's like we know unicorns are not real, but we're saying that unicorns are real, right? If unicorns are not real, or the earth is not flat, and you're continuing saying the earth is flat and there are unicorns, why are we doing this if it's not real? Right? So now that being said, we're going to stop right there. Perfect timing. We're right on schedule to take a break. Sit on that. I honestly want you to take that because we're going somewhere, right? We're going, follow me on the journey. This is actually my personal journey, and I'll talk about that when we come back from break. Okay, so we're going for 5 minutes. Turn off your computer or your camera because we don't want to see what we're not supposed to see, right? So turn off your camera and we'll see you in 5 minutes.
It's too bad we can't play no music.
Yeah, I know this is so not how we do things. So not how we do things. That's okay. You can hum a tune, Oliver.
You don't want to hear me hum. I sound better in my showers. That's okay.
You can hum a tune, man.
There.
It's all family here. Old family and new family. It's going good though. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Did my timer stop? It froze, didn't it?
Actually, I'm not.
I don't see it moving. Oh, there we go. Oh no.
Yeah.
No,
there we go.
Okay, now it's moving.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna step away for a second as well. I'll see you in 4 minutes and 48 seconds.
Yeah. So maybe I'll do the same. Sound like my old alarm clock.
Mine too. Mine too. As much as I didn't like the sound of it, it was very effective. Mark can tell you.
I used to beat it up all the time.
Okay, we're back. Thank you. Most of us are back on time. Not sure what's happening with Georgia and Nadia. Hopefully, Mark, Oliver, sorry, keep track.
Yes.
And I noticed we lost 2 already. I don't know what that means, if they didn't like what they heard thus far, or if there was a technical difficulty, I'm not sure. Either way, the show is going on, okay? The show must go on. So I'm starting again where we left off. Is everybody, Oliver, are you seeing the screen?
Yes.
Mark and Oliver? Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, so we're continuing. Oh, before we continue, actually, any comments in the chat, Oliver?
Let me check.
Okay.
Just one comment just before we went on break here. I think we put the 2 definitions together from Beverly. I'm not sure what she was referring to. If you can clarify.
Beverly, share. Yeah.
The last one down at the bottom, the identity is the fact of being who or what a person is.
Yeah.
And social construct refers to something that does not. And I think we use it probably interchangeably, or we just think of the one word when we say race. We're not necessarily going to say culture. Mm-hmm. I think we would sooner identify when speaking and say race, excuse me, instead of a person's culture.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah. Again, the emphasis being here that race is artificial, right? And culture is the one you want to be identifying with, because that's based on facts. Okay, anybody else? Did you let that sink in a bit? Anybody want to share any comments about this slide before we go on? Anything else notable, stick out, stand out, anything you object to? Anything here doesn't make sense, anything at all? We're working together through this, in this process. Okay, so I'll just give you a little bit of background. I took one of my majors in university was sociology, and I learned about the self-fulfilling prophecy. I thought it was interesting at the time, but I had no idea that, let me see, how many years have I been out of school? Let's say 2. Okay, so in the last 2 years that I'm circling back and using all this stuff that I learned, right? And for me, it helped me get a good understanding of who I am as a person. My parents immigrated here from Trinidad and Tobago in the 70s, and I was born in Canada. My dad always likes to talk about the struggle he had as an immigrant here in the 70s and having children, raising, I guess, Canadian-born children. And his struggle was, how do I raise them? Do I raise them as like a Trinidadian immigrant, or do I raise them as a Canadian? Because he doesn't know what a Canadian is. You know, he's still trying to get it together here. You know what I mean? Like create a life, assimilate and all of that stuff, right? So he wanted me to have, like, I guess, he wanted me to feel like any other Canadian, and I have everything that all the other Canadians have. But it's hard to do that when your perspective is the Trinidadian, not just the Trinidadian perspective, the Trinidadian immigrant perspective. That's different. Because he's trying to raise me. Meanwhile, he's still trying to balance here in Canada. He's dealing with all kinds of stuff. Both my parents dealing with all kinds of stuff. When we think we have it rough now, what it was like in the 60s and 70s, right? When they were coming. So he never actually ever asked me my opinion, right? Because he always likes to tell the story, you know, that was his biggest dilemma as a father. How do I raise my children here? And he never really asked me. And my answer is he raised me as something in between. That's the answer, you know, because it's impossible. If you're not Canadian, you never grew up here, you don't have any frame of reference to raise a child Canadian. All right. And of course, he's not Trinidadian, he's Trinidadian in transition. Because now when he goes back to Trinidad, they sniff him out one time. They know he's not from there. Right? They want to say you're gone foreign. They know it when he goes back there. You know what I'm talking about, right? So it's like an in-between. So I'm going to tell him that the next time. I'm sorry you didn't come on tonight, but that's what I'm going to tell him because he never asked me. But yeah, so I'm actually taking you on the journey that I went through. It obviously wasn't so structured. It was a long, drawn out process. And when I got to at the very end is when I started these nonprofit organizations, right, which are showing on the bottom right of your screen. I'll talk a little bit about those organizations later on. But for me, it was really important. It became pivotal for me when I started having children. You know, everything kind of was like, I just kind of follow everything everybody else is doing, and I'm not really giving much thought to it until I had my own children, you know, and then I took it really seriously, what information I'm putting in their little minds, you know, and how do I raise them to be successful and to reach their full potential. I became very, very cognitive of my responsibility to give them the correct information so that they have full, you know, they can reach their full potential. So let's continue the journey. Buckle up. Did you know? Can I have someone read this here? DYK means did you know? DYK, hashtag DYK, did you know? May I have a volunteer to read the did you know?
I got Shannon.
Recognizing that race is a social construct, the Commission describes people as racialized person or racialized group instead of the more outdated and inaccurate terms racial minority, visible minority, person of color, or non-white.
Thank you, Shannon. Did you know that the Ontario Human Rights Commission does not use the outdated and inaccurate terms, racial minority, visible minority, person of color, or non-white? Did you know that? This is the Ontario Human Rights Commission. Because they recognize that race is artificial. It's a social construct. We're moving on. Thank you, Shannon. Another DYK. Did you know? May I have a volunteer?
We got Ingrid and Joe.
In the 18th and 19th century, European and American writers proposed geographically based scientific differences among the races. These and other race theories have been dismissed scientifically.
Thank you, Joe. Is that new information? Thumbs up if that's new information for you. Thumbs up. Thank you, Georgia. Anybody else? Amanda, Oliver, Lisa. Yes, thank you. Is that new information for anybody else? Beverly's shaking her head yes. Jay's shaking her head yes. What about Roberto? Did you know this, Roberto? Oh, maybe has an issue with the unmute button. Oliver, anything in the chat?
Ingrid says new. This is new.
Thank you. Okay, good. Knowledge is power, folks. Let's continue. Okay. So we're going a little bit deeper now. Let's talk about our own people of Caribbean descent. We know that now we know, right? If we didn't know before, we know now that race is artificial. We also know that it has no scientific basis and that it was dismissed by scientists. And we do also know that people of Caribbean descent are going around identifying with these two terms, right? Is that fair? Or is that false? Thumbs up if what I'm saying here is true. Are there people of Caribbean descent that are identifying as brown or black? Right. And there are also Caribbean people who are identifying others. So maybe they don't self-identify as brown or black, but somebody else of Caribbean descent, they're identifying them as brown or black. It's a common, these two terms are very common terms in our Caribbean community, Caribbean Canadian community, right? So like I'm gonna remind you again, it's artificial and it's not scientific. It's been scientifically dismissed. So I'm not gonna ask for a volunteer to read all of this because that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the Caribbean Canadian identity. But the first thing I wanted to do was to share with you some of the facts that are already out there, right? And one of the biggest problems is that knowledge doesn't filter in our community very well. It doesn't disseminate. Not everybody gets the information. So that's the first thing. And then of course you make your own choice after that. But the goal here is to share the information, the facts. So there's a lot here. You can read it. You can take your own time and read it. I don't need a volunteer to read it out loud. Take a minute and you read what is defined as brown. This is what I found off the internet. And there's so much more, eh? There's a lot more. And you know, what black means. And you'll see that like, if there's more than one block, that's already a problem. Wouldn't you agree? If there's 5 different ways to describe one particular person or one particular race, that's problematic. Wouldn't you agree? Yes or no? Isn't it problematic or no? I could be wrong. If you're not clear, bam, who are you? Bam, this is who I am. You have to come with bam, 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 and expect people to remember that. And expect yourself to remember that.
So Shannon is saying that this is not new to her.
Oh, very good. See, Shannon is on the ball. Who was that? Roberto? Who just came on?
Roberto.
Oh, Roberto, you had something? Okay. Yeah, so I'm talking about people of Caribbean descent who are either using these terms to talk about themselves, or they're using these terms to talk about other people in their own community. So it goes both ways. Both parties are participating, right? Whether you identify with these terms or not, you're still using it. So you're part of the problem.
But Ingrid and Joe have said it's new, so I'm not sure.
Oh.
You want to just speak to? Do you want to speak to that or no?
Yeah. Well, yes. You wanted to add Ingrid and Joe.
I think that new was old. That wasn't about this particular slide. It was the previous slide.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. And this is why Mark is not the moderator. I don't know why he jumped in there as the moderator.
So every once in a while I need help too, but I got something from Beverly.
Okay.
Do we not also get caught up in what shade the person is as well? Brown, dark skin, or light skin, black skin, or dark skinned? Wow, that's interesting.
So again, that you're talking about race. When you're talking about skin color, you're talking about classifying people by race, and race we already established is an artificial distinction. We've already established that a few slides ago, right? So skin color, it doesn't hold any weight.
If we can,
and Beverly is right. We do it.
Sorry, Camille. If we can,
go ahead.
Georgia, I think she has something to say.
Yes.
I just wanted to echo. What you said there, Camilla. The thing is that with the different shades of brown or black, that would go under colorism. So
yes,
yeah, it's just something that almost dark light commissioner, everybody's
yeah
or whatever, but that's more along the lines of colorism.
Correct. Colorism and racism are grounded in race, right? Colorism and racism are grounded in the topic of race, and we've already established race is artificial. It's like talking about unicorns. It's like trying to have an educated debate or about unicorns. Unicorns do not exist. They're artificial. Or like debating whether the earth is round versus flat. Right? You can't have an intelligent, not to be disrespectful, but I'm being very, very candid and honest here. You cannot have, don't expect to have a productive or intelligent conversation about something that doesn't exist. Usually that we leave that to what we call crazy people, right? When they talk about things that don't exist, we like to say they're crazy. Right? So let me move on here, but thank you for the feedback. This is awesome, an awesome conversation. I'm seeing the energy level going up. I don't know if people got a glass of wine on the break, or now we're starting to get really into the thing. I don't know what it is, or because Officer Ingrid is back on the screen. I don't know what it is, but I'm loving it. Okay, so we're gonna continue.
Before you move on, Candy was echoing colorism is so big in Trinidad. Not sure if it's in other islands. Yes, in other islands. I can speak for myself when it comes to Jamaica. You know, it's really huge. It's usually, you know, it just divides us between light skin and dark skin. And
dividing us on an artificial
basis. And she was also saying that there is even racism within brown race, and it's frustrating. And Georgia was adding that it's in Jamaica as well. It's very much so, hence the whole bleaching culture. Ooh.
Oh man, that's another workshop for another day. Thank you for the responses. Anything else, Oliver?
No, that's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And by the way, thank you to our moderator and my handsome assistant, Mark. Both handsome moderator and handsome assistant, Mark. They're doing an amazing job, even though I'm teasing them. They're doing an amazing job. Did you know this is the etymology of the colonial terms that are still lingering, we're still using. So it's showing at the top, it's showing you the original, and then way down the bottom, the last thing, it's showing you what we were using. Did you know this? Did you know that these were how the words were derived, where they came from? If you knew, put a thumbs up. I'm looking at Shannon now, because Shannon knows it. Shannon's way ahead, right? If you knew, put a thumbs up. Oh, Nadia knew. And by the way, you don't get extra points if you knew, eh? I'm just Nadia and Shannon and Ingrid and Joe. There's no extra points, right? I'm just good to, I'm just taking in what's going on here. Yeah. So these are how the terms originated. Right, so you see that.
So Georgia is saying some of the words she knew, but not all. Which ones do you know? Which one do you knew, Georgia?
Don't say the last one.
I didn't know that it originated Latin, that it was Latin, that's where it started. All the others I was aware,
yes,
but I didn't know it was Latin.
Yes, so black is in there. Just in case you missed that, black is in there.
Okay.
Black is just the English translation for I'm sure a term that you don't like. I'm sure none of these terms, none of us are okay with. And yet we're saying the English version of it, thinking that it's any better. Do words have meaning? Better yet, do words have power? Is it important to know what words are coming out of our mouths? Does it affect our actions, our behaviors, like self-fulfilling prophecy, whether we know it or not? Does it affect how other people respond to us? Even though we don't even know that we're putting off something there just by the words we're using to identify ourselves. Do our words influence our beliefs? If we think we are this and the translation means that, and we know very well what that means.
It's interesting what Nadia was saying in the chat. It's how Nigeria was named by the Europeans. Wow.
Okay. Baby girl is getting excited. She's learning something new today. Anybody else want to share? Thank you, Nadia. Anybody else have any comments even about this slide here? I hope it's starting to get a little bit obvious, right? Why we're choosing Caribbean Canadian at this point. If it hasn't been, up until this point, if it hasn't been obvious, don't worry, I'll make it obvious. Okay, it was coming up. All right, so we're moving on. Next screen. Did you know? Can I have a volunteer, please?
We got Beverly.
Thank you, Beverly.
Go ahead, Bev.
Oh, okay. Some perceive Black as a derogatory, outdated, reductive, or otherwise unrepresentative label, and as a result, neither use nor define it, especially in African countries with little to no history of colonial racial segregation. Some have commented that labeling Black people is erroneous, as the people described as Black are seen by some to have a brown skin color.
Thank you, Beverly. So the question here is, did you know? Thumbs up if you knew that some people perceive this as derogatory and outdated.
Mm-hmm.
Beverly says yes. Mark is saying yes.
Ahora?
Joe and Ingrid say yes.
Yeah, después.
Lisa, yes. So yeah, so some knew that not everybody is okay with using this term. It's outdated. But I'm one of those people who think it's derogatory, outdated, reductive, and otherwise unrepresentative label. I'm one of those people. When they say some, they were talking about me. Okay. All right. Can I ask for poll number 3, Mark, please? So it's coming up on your screen. Take 1 minute to fill out. And I believe this one you can, no, you have to fill out one. You have to choose one. Generally, people of Caribbean descent who accept race as part of their identity are which, in your opinion? Are they unaware of the science? Are they ignoring the science? They don't believe in the science, or they don't care about the science, in your opinion? Why are people of Caribbean descent still using this term, Black and brown, and any other racially based terms? Whether you self-identify by race or not, why do you think some are still doing it? Unaware of the science, ignoring the science, don't believe in the science, don't care about the science. We have 15 seconds left. So far, 73% say they're unaware of the science. 9% say ignoring, 9% say they don't believe, 9% say they don't care. So the overwhelming majority of you believe that they're unaware of the science. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, we're continuing. Just a couple graphics here. Some famous people, I'm sure, in American history, in world history, actually. Martin Luther King Day, I believe, is it Monday or Tuesday? It's coming up. Okay, so in Martin Luther King's day, he used to use the term Negro, right? Because at the time, Negro was the acceptable term. And then Malcolm X came along and he was using Black for a little while. And then towards the end of his life, he came up with this quote: "The Black man's history, when you refer to him as the Black man, you go way back. But when you refer to him as a Negro, you can only go as far back as the Negro goes. And when you go beyond the shores of America, you can't find a Negro, because that's an American-based term." And right before he passed, he had right before he was assassinated, he actually established the first, what was it called? The Afro-American Unity Organization. So he started using a non-racial identity. He's called it Afro-American. He was the first one to coin the term. So in other words, he is now using ancestry, which is a part of culture. So he went through a stage of, I guess, learning and growing, and he realized that those two terms, Black and Negro, are harmful. They don't help. When we say Afro-American, we include everyone in the Western Hemisphere of African descent. South America is America. Central America is America. South America has many people in it of African descent. Not that this is an African workshop. I'm just saying to you that he transitioned from race to something a little more factual. Did everybody know this? Thumbs up if you knew this. Wow. Shannon, thumbs up. Anybody else? Thumbs up if you knew this. Yeah, this is good information, folks. Oliver, anything in the chat?
We just got something from Candy. I did not know. Candy did not.
Yeah. Right before he left this earth, he had discovered that it was more important to identify with ancestry. In their case, ancestry, right? Because they didn't really have a culture. They were stripped of it, right? So they don't even know where they came from. In our case, we know we can trace our relatives, at least the first couple generations back is the Caribbean. But obviously they have a different history. And so, yeah, he totally stopped using those terms. Malcolm X.
If I can pause for a second, I'm not sure if Ingrid and Joe wants to go back. Can you clarify what paragraph? She was saying that I don't quite understand the last paragraph. What are you referring to?
It was actually the paragraph before, just the last one that says, some people have commented that labeling people Black is erroneous, as the people described as Black are seen by some to have a brown skin color. So perhaps someone can
Anybody, you're asking for clarification?
I was.
Ingrid, you're asking for clarification? Yes, okay. Anybody can clarify what that last comment, that's a good question, what that last paragraph, what they're talking about? Can I have a volunteer to clarify what that means? How did you interpret that last paragraph? Anybody? Some have commented that labeling people Black is erroneous, since the people described as Black are seen by some to actually have a brown skin color. Candy, sorry, I'm taking Oliver's job now.
Okay. I was actually looking at the screen. Go ahead, Candy. Wait until you're muted. I'm muted. Hold on.
I think I turned off that feature now, Oliver, where they can just unmute on their own.
Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
I took that to mean by it's very narrow, like the term Black. It's like what is Black when there's different shades of color? Like at what point are you Black versus dark brown, medium? Like it's just too, it's erroneous.
Thank you, Candy.
You're welcome.
Anybody else, Oliver, in the chat?
No, that's it.
Okay.
That
Beverly's waving. Go ahead, Beverly. I think you can unmute on your own, if I'm not mistaken. No?
Now I can. Now I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just think, and I guess I'll just use myself as an example. Like before, people would say, "Oh, you're Black," and it's like, well, and they would take everybody who is non-white and just say you're Black according to how you look, right? So, whilst I think that's wrong, but then I believe sometimes when people use certain phrases, it's just because they don't know any better. They don't have clarification what that really means and what it sounds like to the person that they're calling that word.
Right. Yeah.
So
yes.
Right. And it's Like, and I've heard people say, well, I'm not black, I'm brown. Well, hi, come on. Technically, we're all brown. We're not like, black, jet black type of thing. But and I guess it's just one of those things that it came about. It became acceptable to some who use it, and for us, it's not acceptable. So. But I find this all is very interesting, because even some of the things that were on the slides before, and it's like even the media, like on the news, African American like bothers my spirit to no end, and it's just like, why I sometimes believe it's like, okay, why do we have to say anything? You're talking about people. Just talk about the person, or if that is need to be. But then again, in the media, if it's a situation where they're identifying a, somebody that was involved in a robbery or a murder, and if it's a person of color, they're going to tell you that they're black. They're, plain and simple, with the cornrows in his hair, or the dreads or something like that. But when they're identifying somebody who is Caucasian, they're just Caucasian. So it's like, the Caucasian word sounds so much nicer than saying black with, dreads and thing or whatever. And I just like, that just irks me sometimes when I do hear it.
Thank you for sharing, Beverly.
Now, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Did you want to say something? She had a number one. I think Rexella wanted.
Okay.
Just unmute yourself.
Forgot my point. I actually forgot what I was going to say, but I do agree with what Beverly said just now. I was about to say the same thing.
Okay. Thank you, Rexella.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So again, keeping in mind what she's saying is true. It does happen, but again, what we've learned tonight is that we do have control over our own thoughts and beliefs. And our own thoughts and beliefs can project out and impact other people's thoughts and beliefs, right? That's the whole self-fulfilling prophecy. So there's work to be done, is what I'm saying. There's work to be done. Can I have a volunteer to read the Did You Know? This is just, again, we're not here for ancestry. We're talking about Caribbean Canadian culture, but this is a part of it because it's important to know the difference between race and ancestry. Some people think that's synonymous. They think culture and race are synonymous. They think ancestry and race is synonymous. So I'm just trying to clarify and make sure everybody here has the information, the facts. May I have a volunteer to read the Did You Know?
We have Jair. Go ahead, Jair, unmute yourself.
Okay. Yep. Ancestry reflects the fact that human variations have a connection to the geographical origins of our ancestors. Unlike the term race, it focuses on understanding how a person's history unfolded, not how they fit into one category and not another. In a clinical setting, for instance, scientists would say that diseases such as sickle cell anemia and cystic fibrosis are common in those of sub-Saharan African or Northern European descent, respectively, rather than in those who are Black or white.
Thank you, Jay. So that's how scientists would identify certain groups who are more prone to sickle cell or cystic fibrosis rather than using Black or white, because that doesn't really tell you anything. It doesn't really give you the information. Scientists need information when they're researching and coming up with cures and, you know what I mean, looking into disease. They need information. They need the long history. They need the story. They know where people are coming from. They don't know that from just saying Black or white. It's dismissed by science. Those terms are dismissed. They have no validity. Is this new? Did you think race and ancestry were the same? Thumbs up if you thought it was the same thing. Okay, Roxella's saying no, she didn't think that. Anybody else? Were you thinking that they're the same thing? That when you say Black, that people assume that you mean Afro descent or African descent? Or when you say that person's a Black person, were you meaning to say that they're of African descent? Because if that was the case, then yes, you were thinking they were the same thing. Anybody?
So Nadia is saying, I agree with all this. For years, I've described myself as a Caribbean woman of African descent.
Makes sense. What you say impacts your beliefs. What you believe impacts your behavior, and your behavior impacts other people's behavior. Okay, did you know? These are fun. Anyway, for me, it was fun. I can't speak for everybody here. Can I have a volunteer to read the did you know?
Okay, so cultural identity is an important contributor to people's well-being. Identifying with a particular culture gives people feelings of belonging and security. It also provides people with access to social networks, which provide support and shared values and aspirations. These can help break down barriers and build a sense of trust between people, a phenomenon sometimes referred to as social capital.
Thank you, Candy. Question for the panel tonight, everybody here. Is there a lack of trust in the Caribbean Canadian community? Thumbs up if the answer is yes. Don't break your neck, Candy. Georgia's got 2 thumbs up, not just 1, 2. Is there a lack of trust between Caribbean Canadians? Everybody's saying yes. I don't see anybody. If you think we're all happy-go-lucky and everybody's kumbaya in our community, tell me about it. And point me in the direction. Perhaps.
Candy is going as far as saying it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. And that's why we're here, right? We're here to fix that. Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. Oliver, you know what? Honestly, I need to hear from you. Oliver, what do you think about what Candy just read there?
I don't think you guys are ready for what I gotta say.
I know you've been holding back. You've been holding back for the last hour and a half. I know, Oliver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. For me, before I came across this organization, I was very uncomfortable with the word Black and Caribbean. First, I went through a phase of African American, and I wasn't American. Then we have African Canadian. Then there's a whole, series of different identity we're going through. And I was struggling, to be honest with you. And I'll use it here and there, and I'll not use it, and I'll use it. And since I started getting involved in Caribbean Canadian culture and the organizations, I start really realizing, and now, based on my teachings, I teach about label. I have a whole module about labeling and how labeling affect, just like the slides that you first showed, our beliefs and our thought process on who we actually are. And this is the reason why the question you ask about, is there trust? So if you don't have if you don't actually know who you are, a really proper identity, you're going to be almost like wishy-washy, right? There's no togetherness. And I remember last year we were watching, I'm not sure if it was the news, I believe it was the news, and my son was beside me, and the anchor was describing African American, and he said, I believe it was three. He said people of color, African American, and Black in one sentence. And my son said to me, I'm confused.
Yeah.
Why did he say all three just to talk about our race?
Yeah,
right?
I've seen that. Mhm.
So I spent a whole half an hour, kind of talking to him. I let him understand. I call it, based on my mentor, we're all drinking this Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah, like what Beverly was saying.
And I've been in many discussion, workplaces, different networks about this very simple, well, not simple, but complicated topic. So there's a lot more. I hope there's more conversation happening.
Oh yeah. This is this is the tip of the iceberg. We're just
Yeah,
scratching the surface here.
I want to leave it like that.
We're scratching the surface because we're talking about generations of not having this information, and then to switch overnight, to switch in 2.5 hours is not going to be easy. My goal here is to at least get you at the end of this at 8:30 to have this still in the back of your mind so you can think about it and ask yourself the hard questions and challenge everything that you thought was right, everything you thought was normal, everything you thought that was supposed to be the way it is. I'm asking you to challenge those. You have the right to do that. You can do it. You should do it. Just like Malcolm X did it. He challenged what was already out there, the language that was out there and all of that. He challenged it. We're supposed to do that. Especially now, as we now living in a new era, right? The hopefully post-pandemic era. Where do we go from here? If this didn't push a pause button on everything you thought you knew, you weren't paying attention, right? So even the timing of this workshop was not by accident, because a lot of people are questioning and searching and yearning for belonging, learning for purpose. Why am I here? Why is my loved one not here and I'm here? So that's the reason why we did it now, so early in the year, right? Because we know that we're on shaky ground right now. It's scary, but it's also really exciting because of the shift that's happening for a lot of different reasons. Pandemic being the biggest one, right? But yeah, it's a big deal. What we're talking about here tonight is a huge deal. Things that we don't have spaces to talk about. We don't have spaces to talk like this. Where do you talk about this and people don't start kicking up a fuss and cussing you down, or you're timid to share things that you've been thinking the whole time, right? So this is a safe space. You're allowed to question everything. You're allowed to reinvent yourself. You don't have to go with what everybody else is doing, right? And that can be scary too, like Beverly was saying. We kind of just do it because everybody else is doing it. It's always really scary, right? When you have to do something against everybody else. Scary to do that. When I started homeschooling my children, knowing that the majority of everybody puts their kids in institutional schools, private school or public school or Catholic school or whatever. And I made that decision, Mark and I made that decision to homeschool. It was a big deal, right? Because you're going against what everybody else is doing. It must be right because everybody else is doing it. I must be the wrong one because I'm doing something different. You're allowed to change your mind. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And you can find other people who are just like you, thinking the same way you do. You surround yourself with those people who think like you and want the same things. As we move, what time is it now? Keeping track, we have another break coming up. The Caribbean identity. So we already talked about identity versus race. Can anybody just recap again, if you remember how many slides ago before the break? What's the main difference between identity and race? Anybody remember? I think it was Rick Sella that read the slide. And it was the last row that she read there that highlighted the two differences, race between identity. Anybody remember? Which one's real and which one's artificial?
You can unmute yourself, Rexella. So you're still
Is
muted.
Rexella getting the notification?
Race
There you
is
go.
false.
Oh, there you go.
Race is false. And what's the other one? I'm mixing it up here.
Identity?
Right.
Identity, yeah.
Race is artificial.
Yes, correct. And identity is fact.
Right.
Correct, thank you. Okay, so the Caribbean identity now, right? So if we insert culture into the mix, because identity is not just culture, it's so many different things, right? But we're talking specifically tonight about Caribbean culture and how that plays in who we are, how that helps to define who we are. Many different things define who we are, but that's what we're talking about tonight. The Caribbean part of it, the cultural piece. So these are all the different things that make up the Caribbean, the definition of Caribbean. May I have a volunteer to read all of the 5 bullet points?
So we got Jair. You can unmute yourself, Jair. It's not unmuting? Okay. Mark, can you assist me with that? Jair's, oh, there you go.
All right. A Caribbean identity refers to the qualities, beliefs, and culture common to the geographic area known as the Caribbean. Of or relating to the Caribbean Sea, its island, or its peoples or cultures of this region. A term that explains the artistic, musical, literary, culinary, political, and social elements that are representative of the Caribbean people all over the world. The Caribbean's culture has historically been influenced by that of African, European, and Amerindian and Asian traditions. Caribbean is the term most politically correct social scientists and historians would use to denote the 7,000 odd islands that lie in the Caribbean Sea area, including some North and South American mainland countries which have Caribbean coastlines.
Thank you, Jay. Did you anybody learn anything new with what Jay just read there? What was new there that you didn't know? You can unmute and share. Everybody knew that? Did you know that it included South American countries as well, like Guyana, Suriname, Venezuela? They're a part of the Caribbean. A lot of people of Caribbean descent don't even know that. And that causes a divide. When we're saying things like, you're from Guyana, you're not Caribbean. Not to pick on Guyanese, but I'm just telling you what I've heard in the past. That's them not knowing the education. Right? Or Venezuela's not Caribbean because they speak Spanish. No, hello. They're part of the Caribbean too. Just because you don't speak English doesn't mean you're not part of the Caribbean. So let's clear up some myths tonight. Any other myths that you've heard?
Before we move on, I think Georgia wanted to add.
Yes.
Georgia, unmute.
Thank you. that last statement there, I wasn't aware of North and South America, but you said that they're Caribbean. Do they know that they're Caribbean? Because
okay, good
the
question.
whole thing is that they're, you know, I wasn't aware.
Good question, Georgia. Good question.
Distinguished, but I don't think they know that they're part of the Caribbean as well, because there's clear distinguish between who they are and what and people from the Caribbean. So
well, Caribbean, yes, good point, Georgia. People of Caribbean descent in general don't know their history or all of that. They don't know. Like I think Oliver shared in the past that when he was going to school in Jamaica, he only learned about Jamaica and maybe a few other islands. He didn't learn about all the different islands, you know, so that was what was going on as well back, you know, in their own countries. Not to pick on the Guyanese here, but I use Guyana in my example because I've heard that before. You're from Guyana, so you're not really Caribbean. So if there are any Guyanese on the call right now who are comfortable answering Georgia's question, since Guyana is a part of South America, did you know you were part of the Caribbean? Go ahead, Ingrid.
Well, as a Guyanese, I've always identified as Caribbean or West Indian. More so, I think, you know, we never really use the word Caribbean, but definitely as West Indian. And that's kind of the identity I always grew up as, West Indian.
Thank you. Okay, so good. We just clarified that. Go ahead, Big Joe.
Yeah, I went to school a long time ago, but even back then, Guyanese was being taught as part of the Caribbean. I'm not sure about the Venezuela and the other ones, and I certainly didn't know there were 7,000 odd islands that lie in the Caribbean.
Wow, yeah. Most of them uninhabited, but still 7,000 and plus. Yes. Yeah, so there you go. Ingrid knew. Ingrid always identifies Caribbean, not to say she speaks for all Guyanese, right? But just, you know, in general, there's education there for everybody. There's a lack of education there for, you know what I mean, that we need to address. Everybody needs to know who's who, right? And where they fit in. That's a good point there, Georgia. It's a good point. We don't know and they don't know. Okay, so we're moving on. I think I heard Ingrid mention West Indian. I don't know how she's reading my mind.
Before you move on.
Go ahead.
That was kind of busy.
Oh, it blew up.
Yes. I think Nadia had a lot to say, actually. Central America as well, such as Belize, she was commenting. And she also said that Venezuela politically likes to jump back and forth between Caribbean and Latin America. And I've experienced that myself with a few friends. I'm Guyanese and I always identify as Caribbean, West Indies, Ingrid said. She commented that before. I did not know as well. Official, I always call myself West Indian, Rexella, and Candy. I've heard of that one about Guyana. I always thought them to be Caribbean, but it's like stush. Oh, you're not an island, so you're not Caribbean. Mentality, yeah.
Yeah, those are the conversations going on in our own community. It's not outside the community, eh? Because they couldn't care less, right? It's literally, this is the conversations we're having among ourselves. How sad is that? Okay, fun fact, West Indies was a term coined by colonizing European powers. If you knew that, can you elaborate? Do you know the story behind how it became the West Indies? Is that Nadia? Go ahead.
Nadia, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, Columbus and explorers were trying to find a way to India to get silks and spices and different things cheaper. And they figured out at that time that the earth probably wasn't flat and maybe they could go the other way around, except they didn't know there was an entire land mass between them leaving Europe and trying to get to India. So they stumbled across us, discovered, the Americas, named after Amerigo. And therefore, they just thought we were the Western version of what they were trying to find in the first place. So it's a misnomer. And outside of the cricket team, I don't use the term.
Love it. Okay, so anybody here still think Christopher Columbus was a hero? Look at George's face. Because Nadia was talking about Christopher Columbus, right? He was the one, the prominent one here to coin the term West Indies. So we already know he wasn't a hero. Why are we still saying West Indies? Why are we still using that?
Jay, I wanted to say something. Go ahead.
To add to what Nadia was saying, when the adventurers reached the islands or the Caribbean, they came across the Amerindians and the Arawaks who looked Indian. So that too made them believe that, yes, we reached India, when indeed they were just meeting the Amerindians on the islands. So that too, how that name West Indian came into, because they were traveling west and then they met the Indians in the islands. So that too played a role in how that term came about.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody know where Caribbean comes from, that word Caribbean? On the flip side, where did Caribbean come from? Candy.
I don't know the exact origin, but does it not have to do something with the Carib people, and that's where it's derived from?
Correct.
Oh.
The Carib indigenous people, that particular tribe, the Caribs. Between the two, I would err towards Caribbean versus West Indies. That's just my own personal choice.
Georgia, want to add? Go ahead, Georgia.
Sorry about that. I'm unable to unmute myself. Okay, so just a question in regards to the whole Carib. Would that, where would the terminology, the Caribbean Sea, like who said the Caribbean Sea then? Because I automatically thought, okay, so the Caribbean Sea, the islands are in the Caribbean Sea, hence the Caribbean. So that's how I kind of thought it was named. So just a little more clarification in regards to the whole Carib.
You're saying, sorry, what was the question? You're saying, how did the sea become the Caribbean Sea?
I said, okay, so it's called the Caribbean Sea and the islands are in the Caribbean Sea. So I guess I automatically said, okay, well, it's the Caribbean. So I just wanted some more information in regards to the whole Carib.
I see. You mean like, why would people in South America then be called Caribbean?
No, based on the question, Candy's answer there about the Caribs.
The Caribs, yes.
So how we call Caribbeans. So I was saying that it was, I thought it was because of where the islands were situated.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not the case.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Got it. Yeah. Thank you, Georgia. Anything else in the chat, Oliver?
Nothing else in the chat.
Thank you. Let's take a break. Marinate on that for 5 minutes. Okay, we have 30 seconds left. If you can hear me, 30 seconds left. Ten seconds. And we're back. Mark, are you seeing screen too? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are back. Anything before we move on to the next screen? Comments, questions? Actually, at this point, Mark, I'm going to ask you to pull up poll number 4. I see we lost 2, Oliver. We lost 2.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. Poll number 4. Race versus ancestry. Do race and ancestry mean the same thing? Yes, no, or unsure? We'll wait. Let's wait 30 seconds, Mark, and then we'll shut it down. Okay, thank you, Candy. I missed that. Roberta had another meeting. Got it.
Yeah, I caught that. I did say.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for putting in your feedback there. Let's continue. Thank you for staying on for the ride. Let's continue. Okay, did you know that Caribbean Heritage Month in Canada was established in October 2018? And did you know that Caribbean American Heritage Month was established in 2006 in the United States? So they have a Black History Month, and they also have a Caribbean American Heritage Month. 2 different things, folks. Who knew that? Thumbs up if you knew those 2 facts there. Jay saying yes, Beverly. Shannon saying yes. Anybody didn't know those 2 facts? I only learned about the
Nadia, she didn't know.
Yeah, I only learned about the Caribbean American Heritage Month a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Meanwhile, it's been there since 2006.
Rexilla said never. I guess she never knew.
May I point out that it's not called West Indies Heritage Month? Take it in, Beverly. Words matter. Words have meaning. It's not West Indies Heritage Month. Okay, we're moving on. Found this an interesting relationship between identity and the majority group. Canada being the majority group. Caribbean people being the ethnic group. Canadian being the majority group. Caribbean being the ethnic group. Where is the sweet spot? The sweet spot is the top right corner. That's where we all want to be. Okay, so where's my ad note? I've never used this before. Let me see. Is anything coming up? Hold on. Okay, here. No, still not working. Sorry. I was trying to use the annotation. Oh, here. Are you seeing my mouse or no? Oliver? No, never mind. Okay, never mind. We're continuing. Yeah, so the sweet spot is the top right corner where you have a strong identification with your ethnic group and a strong identification with the majority group. If you have both connections, then you are acculturated, integrated, and you're bicultural, Caribbean Canadian. If you have a strong sense, I'm looking at the top left now, top left box. If you have a strong sense of ethnic identity, but you have a weak connection to the majority group, then you are ethnically embedded, but you're also separated and dissociated. I'm going to the bottom left where it says marginal. That's when you have a weak connection to your ethnic group and a weak connection to the majority group. And then the bottom right, assimilated, which most of us, I think most Caribbean immigrants, they assimilate, right? And that's when you have a strong connection to the majority group and a weak connection to your ethnic group because you're trying to fit in. Where we want to be, the sweet spot is the top right quadrant. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing here? Does it make sense? Have you ever seen this before? I just learned this when I was doing the research for this workshop. I've never seen this before. But it makes sense.
Yeah, for me, this is powerful. Candy, did you want to speak? Go ahead.
I don't know what this would fall into, but I know in Trinidad they have this thing where, you know, you leave Trinidad and you come to Canada and you get bright. You get bright. You get what back home is. You're Canadian now. You get bright. So I feel like that would be assimilated, but I don't know what quadrant that would fall in. You just forget back home. You forget everything about it.
And I guess maybe because they felt they had to, right? Because they want so desperate. Everybody wants to fit in. And you're trying to get rid of your accent because you're treated differently, right? You already look different. Now you're coming sounding different. Ingrid can tell you from her experience on the force. We've all experienced it. So you try to downplay your culture. Now it's fashionable to play up your culture. Now it's all about diversity and inclusion, right? They're actually encouraging you now to speak with your accent, and they're trying to mix up the boards and everything. I said, now it's in style. But back when they were immigrating and stuff like that, right? They had, you know, the only option there was to assimilate. You had another comment, Candy? Or just, okay, yeah.
So when I first came to Canada, I was 5. My elder sister was 9, 10. And when we came, it was actually a thing to take ESL classes, English as a second language, where they taught my elder sister how to speak Canadian.
Wow.
So the accent's gone, you know, the slang is gone, you know, you're not saying guys, you're saying that is, you're not saying over there, it's over there. Wow. And in turn, she would come home speaking, you know, proper English, and we lost I have my accent, but we don't speak with it anymore because we learned from her. And now, you know, everyone coming here, it's, you know, the more Trini you sound, the cooler you are. And, oh, you know, gosh, you're saying this and shit. And it's just like, that's not fair.
Can anybody relate to what Candy is saying here? Does that sound like a familiar story?
Yeah.
It does to me, that's for sure.
Sorry, I personally can relate. When I first came here, we had two things: English ESL and ESD. English as a second dialect and English as a second language.
Wow.
So they put me in second dialect. Oh yeah. And after, I don't know, less than a month, I remember this very vividly. I was helping out the teacher, and I was kind of confused. Why am I in this class? Right? The thing in Jamaica, we can speak, patois on the street, but in school we have to speak, we have to pronounce the words, right? There's no things as proper. You just pronounce the words. On the street, it's broken language, so we just kind of talk with that dialect. So when I came here, and I was helping the teacher, she went to the office and said, "This kid doesn't belong here." I was confused.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that, seeing students coming from Caribbean countries, and then they're in the ESL classes, and they're sometimes even held back a grade or two when they come here. Meanwhile, they're getting exceptional education in the Caribbean, way ahead in the Caribbean, way ahead.
3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Georgia, did you want to speak? Go ahead, unmute yourself, sorry.
I just wanted to echo your statement in regards to growing up in Jamaica, because in high school, we weren't allowed to speak patois in the class. It was only allowed on the playground. You had to speak the Queen's dialect, addressing your teacher or anything like that. And when I migrated to Canada, everyone was kind of impressed that I was able to speak the language without an accent. And I remember going, because when I graduated high school and I came here, and I went to go and apply for college, and you have to take an entrance test because you didn't get your education here. And after passing the test, they're saying, okay, well, why are you going to college? You're like a second year university student. And this was me graduating from high school. So, I can definitely agree that our education system in the Caribbean is way better than it is here. And the whole dialect and thing like that, I didn't understand. I didn't understand the English as a second language because I spoke English.
Yes, thank you, Georgia and Oliver and Candy. Again, the sweet spot where we want to be is the top right quadrant. That's like the best of both worlds. You get to keep your Caribbean culture, and you also get to enjoy being in Canada. And that doesn't just go for immigrants. I'm talking about people who are even born in Canada, like myself. It's my responsibility to hold on to my Caribbean culture. I need that. That's how I was raised. That's my frame of reference. Those are the foods I ate. I ate Caribbean food. I listen to Caribbean music. I like masks, costumes. I like boat rides, like all of that, right? So I'm not picking and choosing immigrant versus Canadian born. That is divisive language. That doesn't work here. That's the kind of conversations in our community that need to stop. Using race to talk about us. You're not born there. You don't like ackee and saltfish. You're not really Jamaican. You don't like doubles. You can't be a Trinidad. That kind of stuff. It's funny, and there's no malice behind it, but you hear that enough, and eventually self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not Caribbean then, since I don't like doubles. I'm not really Trini. These things I'm telling you have an impact on what we believe and how we portray ourselves out there in the world and what we get back from the world. We never really thought about it, right? But this is our time here to think about it. That's what I'm challenging all of you to do. Okay, so let's talk about the Caribbean Canadian identity again, which again has no bearing whether or not you were born in the Caribbean. It has no bearing on whether or not you're actually an island on the Caribbean Sea. You could actually be in South America. It has nothing to do with what language you speak, because we actually have 6 official languages. It has nothing to do with your race, because we already established race is artificial. And it has nothing to do with your ancestry, because so many different ancestries landed in the Caribbean. So I want to hear from you, and I'm going to start taking point notes. What do you think the disadvantages or the advantages are to our community if we started using this more often, Caribbean Canadian, or Lucian Canadian, or Guyanese Canadian, or Bayesian Canadian? In other words, as opposed to using race. If we were to use culture instead, what are the disadvantages and the advantages of doing that? Long term, big picture.
Georgia, go ahead.
I think one of the major advantage is that we'll actually be a family, more cohesive. Everybody will be under the one umbrella. Everyone will feel as if they are part of this one community versus in our own segregated silos, if we start using that terminology more often.
Thank you. Just keep rhyming them off, and I'm going to start inputting this on the slide. Disadvantages and advantages of using Caribbean Canadian. This is where we start analyzing and breaking it down.
Go ahead, Candy. Oh, you're muted.
What is it? My little sister, who is actually Canadian Trinidadian and has dealt with this whole thing because, you know, she's brown, but she's from here. So they're like, well, you're not really Trinidadian. You're just, you know, she was saying that it generalizes the Caribbean when really there's so much. Each country is unique in itself, and it just generalizes everyone. Also, I think an advantage would provide a more united front, and a lot of the issues plaguing the Caribbean and its community would probably diminish significantly if we could all just unite and understand that there's no difference.
Thank you. I can't see you guys. Just keep it coming. Oliver, just keep watching.
Yeah, I got Ingrid coming up next. Go ahead, Ingrid. Ingrid and Joe, I should say.
Okay, there.
Okay, there's Joe.
Hi, Joe.
I think, yeah, if we do that, start calling, one of the advantages of doing so would be that first you'd have to educate yourself about the Caribbean, about what you're calling yourself. So just the educational law would be an advantage.
Yes.
I think.
Thank you.
We got Beverly. Go ahead, Bev. You're still muted.
There we go.
Yeah.
I just think, you know, that there wouldn't be a division. If you're from the Caribbean, you're from the Caribbean. And in conversations like this and other conversations, and we realize we've got similarities, we've got things that are different. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, everybody's from the same region, and it's like, just embrace that, you know, not necessarily, oh, well, I'm from Jamaica and I'm better than you because you're from Trinidad and whatever. Like, forget all of that. I mean, every island is unique. They've got, you know, the things that make them stand out. And I think we should all appreciate that.
Thank you, Beverly. Still can't see anybody. Oliver, tell me when to stop. If there's any.
No, we
Okay.
still have more. We still have Amanda. Go ahead, Amanda.
I also think that being able to use more of a unifying term like Caribbean Canadian, going back to the think, feel, actions, results cycle, if you are able to confidently or be confident in who you are as a Caribbean Canadian rather than one person confident in themselves as a Guyanese or as a Trinidadian or as a Jamaican, when we now are, again, you guys were mentioning the Canadian experience versus the Caribbean experience. When we're here and we're presenting ourselves as Caribbean to people who are not Caribbean and not from any of the islands, it really you can disconfirm their perception of us as people who don't understand, or we're not sure of where we're coming from. There's no unity, because you can ask one person where they're from and they'll say, I'm Black, or I'm from Guyana, or I'm from Trinidad. Whereas you are able to now change that cycle and educate these people, not lecture, but by simply having that unity in the way that we express ourselves all together.
Wow. Amanda.
Deep.
Thank you.
Georgia, go ahead.
I wouldn't say disadvantage. I find is a strong word.
Okay.
I would say the more word I would use is challenge.
Yeah.
Challenge that we would have is the re-education of our people.
Okay.
You know,
Good
we are
point.
we're siloed. And, you know, there's a hierarchy. This island believe it's better because it's larger or whatever the case is. And, you know, they're more populous or whatever, whatever the case is. So the whole idea of, well, no, I don't want to be a part of St. Lucia, or I don't want to be a part of that. You know, I want to be my own island, so to speak. So the whole challenge of re-educating our people would definitely be a mountain to climb.
Yes. Thank you, Georgia. Good point. And now remember too, nobody's asking anybody to strip away their nationality, right? Like, of course you should be proud of the fact that you're from St. Lucia or Guyana, because that is actually part of culture. And we're talking about culture. When we say Caribbean Canadian, we're actually promoting cultural identity. And that is a part of your cultural identity. We're talking about getting away from race. Things that are artificial. But yes, that's a good point. Re-educating the community is a big, big, big challenge. Anybody else, Oliver?
Yes, Rexella, go ahead. And then after Rexella, we have Nadia. You're still muted, Rexella.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think one advantage would be to we will have a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
Instead of pointing fingers. Oh, you're Trinidadian, you're from Barbados, you're from St. Lucia. When something happens, it will relate to all of us. We own it because we are unified, we are together.
Wow.
So that is how I look at it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps from all these answers. Seriously. Anytime you're ready, Oliver.
Yeah, go ahead, Nadia.
Okay, thanks, Oliver. Personally, I would not add the Canadian part, personally, because this is my fourth country. I can't just string all of the other countries on, right? I definitely understand where you talk about like being separated because you have a strong connection to your where you call home, but you're living somewhere else. I've definitely experienced isolation in immigration, you know, having done it a few times. I wouldn't add the Canadian part also because I think it would be limiting. I am Caribbean because that's where I was born and that's how I grew up and that's what I know about myself. But I don't necessarily want Canada to be the last of the countries in my list. So that's me personally, why I wouldn't add that.
Okay, so tell me again, it's too limiting, like adding Canada there, limits what? Tell me how
where else you could live, and instead of like bicultural, I would identify as multicultural because of all of those experiences piled on top.
Got it.
On the flip side, I think I like, if I had to, if I like say it was two countries, I would definitely, I like having Caribbean first.
Yeah.
I'm not Canadian Caribbean, but Caribbean Canadian.
Yeah.
I like that. It's a sense of pride.
Yes.
And it also would help us throughout the diaspora to encourage our family members, friends, etc., who are still living home, wherever we consider specifically to be home, to explore the region. Because the reality of a Caribbean identity isn't going to take effect until more of us actually explore what those similarities and differences are in our subcultures. And so, you know, we should take advantage of like free movement of labor with CSME and all of these things and really get to understand what that means to participate in, you know, other perspectives of being Caribbean. So that's me personally.
Thank you. Any more before we go on, Oliver? We have 6 minutes left. Maybe one more and then we continue. Oliver's on mute.
Yeah, nothing, nothing
Okay.
so far right now.
Oh, perfect timing. Okay. All right. So let me put the screen back up then. Is it showing now, Oliver?
Yes.
Okay. Not many disadvantages or challenges. Clearly, it's in our best interest to use the term. Okay, moving on. Can everybody agree that using this term or identifying with this has an impact on self-fulfilling prophecy, like they're connected? Anybody at this point think it's disconnected, like there's no relationship between your who you think you are, who you believe you are, compared to what you put out and what you receive? Anybody at this point thinking that this is not related to each other? Okay. All right, we're moving on. Okay, so this is our mantra. We are here, accomplished and united. That's our mantra. That started 5 years ago. What does that mean? And what are some steps we can take to tackle racial divide and foster a sense of belonging? According to Rexella, she's talking about sense of ownership, sense of belonging. How do we foster that in our community? How can you do that? Let's get more local. How can you do that? As opposed to speaking of arbitrarily, somebody should do this. No, how can you do that? Because you identify as Caribbean Canadian, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So you have a sense of, you should have a sense of ownership, according to Rexella. So what can you do in your day-to-day? Let's make it practical, because nobody has time. On top of that, it's COVID. So we're already, lack of motivation already, all around lack of motivation. But just in your day-to-day, what changes can you make? Or what can you do? What can you say? How can you behave? What can you do? That's I think Candy. Yeah, go ahead, Candy.
Yeah, Candy.
Like you said, it starts in your everyday behavior. So it starts in your conversation, the way you speak to others. I know a lot of our community is based on the humor of poking fun at other islands and the humor of poking fun at their women or their accent or the way they behave or the way their mothers and fathers are. And I think it's fun to poke fun and have that humor, but in an actual conversation with someone to carry those stereotypes forward, that's where we're damaging ourselves.
Thank you, Candy. Oliver, anybody in the chat?
Let me check again. No.
Anybody else? If it's anything else different from what Candy just said.
So Nadia is saying that support businesses owned by Caribbean people, not the ones appropriating our culture.
Thank you, Nadia. And I think Georgia had a comment before that, no? Yeah. Or was that for something else?
Let me see. Georgia is, oh yeah, all about having informative dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking. Yes. That's one thing we need to work on. It's communication. Big time. We will jump up and wave our rag. Any day of the week, we will jump up and wave our rag. Yeah. But let's sit down and talk in an intimate space and really share our feelings and be vulnerable. Not so much.
Ingrid, Did you want to speak, Ingrid? Go ahead. Ingrid and Joe.
Yes, I think we also have to pass on our culture to our kids. Not all of them are receptive to that educational process, but one of them, for instance, in our family, we would take our kids during the summer to the different islands to introduce them to that, those various cultures as well. Because without that, they do not connect that well here, especially with Ingrid and I, since we've been here for a while, and in the area we live, when our kids were growing up, the culture was certainly different to what it is.
Exactly. Thank you, Joe. Of course, we have to educate the future generations. Big time. That is huge. That's a game changer. Because it may be too late for a lot of us now. It may be too late to change the ones now. But young growing minds, especially now, who they're already ahead. We already know these kids are something else. They're already ahead with technology and so on, and including everybody and all of that stuff. Like they're just way ahead in their thinking, right? So now's the time to invest in our kids.
Yes, and Rexella was echoing what Joe said, educate our fellow Caribbean and defend and support them.
That's big.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 8:30, Oliver?
Yes.
Time check.
Yes, it is.
Okay. If anybody has to leave now, thank you for logging in. I have about 5 minutes left, but I want to be respectful of your time. So thank you for logging in. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay on for 5 more minutes and we'll finish up. We'll wrap up. Okay. Anything in the comments for me, Oliver, or I can go ahead?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Rexella was saying stop criticizing as well, which is huge.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's not malicious, but you hear it enough times, you eventually believe it, right? And then when you believe it, we got a problem. Now we start self-fulfilling that prophecy. Once that thing sinks in, it's tough to get it out. Here are some other things you can do. We can change the census form. Let me see if this works for me. Hold on. Stand by 1 sec. I'm going to pull up this article that I found recently. Let's see, where is this? Okay, it's coming now. Okay, this was in cbsnews.com. Identify yourself as being Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin on the 2010 US Census questionnaire, and you'll get to be more specific about your ancestry, such as Mexican, American, Cuban, or Puerto Rican. But if you check the box for Black, African American, or Negro, there'll be no place to show whether you trace your identity to the African continent, a Caribbean island, or a pre-Civil War plantation. Some Caribbean American leaders are urging their communities to write their nationalities on the line under some other race. On the forms arriving in the mailboxes whenever they were doing it, along with checking the racial categories they feel identify them best.
They have some
Have you looked
applications
at your
here in
census
Canada
form
like
lately?
that too.
Don't fill it out. Use the other. That's how you educate them.
Yeah.
Stop filling out the box that doesn't clearly speak to who you are. Use the other. Take more space if you need to. Go past the line. Go under the line. Because some of us are mix up, right? Like me. So I'll just keep going. You don't have to settle. It's our job. It's actually our responsibility to do it. Not just allow them to continue what they think is right. We know what's right. Not just going with the flow, whatever, just it's easier. Let me just not ruffle any feathers. Just you owe it to yourself to do it. You're selling yourself short if you're not doing it. Reject racial classification. How about stop using race terms? Challenge yourself to do that. And it's not going to be easy. It wasn't easy for me when I stopped doing it. I don't use those terms anymore. My kids don't use those terms to identify themselves. It's not easy to do it. It's a work in progress. But every time you see yourself saying black or brown, stop yourself. Sorry, I meant to say this. Reject colonialist, divisive terms. Embrace your cultural identity. Reinvent your community identity. We're allowed to reinvent ourselves. Malcolm X realized that those terms, first of all, not Malcolm, Martin Luther King Jr. didn't like the really harsh N-word. And he realized he didn't like that. He started using Negro. And then Malcolm X, after assessment and educating and all of that, realizes actually even that's not worthy to define who we are. Let's use our ancestry instead. In that case, he used Afro-American. You're allowed to do that. Just whatever you read in books, whatever you're seeing in the media, whatever you're saying, whatever you're seeing in movies and music, that doesn't mean that it's right. You know who you are, and you have the right to counter that narrative. You're supposed to counter that narrative. If you're not doing that, you're disservicing yourself, first of all. And then you're disservicing future generations, because Joe already established it's important that we establish culture in our kids. And you're letting things slide and this and that, and it's okay, and everybody does it, and it's fine. That's a disservice to our kids now and the kids in the future when you do that. That's not helping them reach their full potential. That was my thought process when I became a mother, because I took it really serious. Teach your children to identify. Yeah, so that's just what Joe was saying. So in these organizations, there's 3 different organizations. There's a women's group, a parents group, and a professionals group. They're all nonprofit corporations. They all have memberships. You have to apply for a membership. And they all have boards of directors and a ton of different activities going on right now virtually, because we're trying to take care of our own. A ton. Let me give you an example. We have a self-confidence boot camp for women of Caribbean descent. We have a gratitude challenge going on. Where's Nadia? Did she leave? There she is, Nadia. Yeah, we have a gratitude challenge going on with the members until the 31st. It's been going on for the whole month. So from January I think it was even before that, to January, maybe 2 months.
Yeah, 2 months.
Yeah, then we have health and wellness. We have kids education. Ingrid's grandson is in that. Kids Caribbean education every Tuesday. So what we're trying to do, if anybody's familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Nadia's shaking her head yes, right? Rexella, yes. Basically says that human beings have certain needs based on where they are, based on their circumstances, right? Of course, the first need is food and water and shelter. When you're okay with that, you're stable, getting your basic needs covered, then it's safety needs. When you have that covered, now you're longing for belongingness. Your needs grow as you grow. So I think, in my opinion, our Caribbean Canadian community already has the first 2 already covered, but we're still acting as though we don't. We're still in survival mode. People living here in Canada are still in survival mode. Even the ones born here, me, I've been acting like I'm in survival mode. I gotta, check my check, and and so I want our community to go to the next step. That's where we're going. We're headed up. Up, 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 up. That's where we're going. It's time, don't you think? We've been here for a while. Just so you know, we've been here since the late 1700s. Just so you know. Fun fact, we've been here since the late 1700s. I think it's time we level up. And that requires work. And that requires a collective of people. You can't do that on your own. That's a big, big, big thing to do. You have to find yourself around people who want the same thing. Then it's not a chore. Then you're happy to do it. But you're trying to do it in a group that don't think like you, and it's deflating. You give up. These are the things that we're into at these organizations, okay? These are things that are, I guess, opposite to how we've been doing it all along. We're literally changing the mindset. How we used to do it is not working anymore. So all these here, think of the opposite. That's what we're doing right now in our community. Knowledge versus lack of knowledge. How about that? We actually learn about the Caribbean. Candy does a really good job, Candy. She does Jeopardy for us, Caribbean Jeopardy. And we meet up and we just play a fun game learning about the different countries. Different things about the different Caribbean countries. That's how, where are you gonna learn it? In school? Are you going to take it upon yourself with everything else going on to go and learn, go to the library and learn everything? You're not gonna do it. You're gonna run out of steam. It's a lot to learn on your own. Friendship and inclusion and sense of belonging was what Rexella was talking about. We don't have that right now. That's where we're going with these organizations. It's a totally different thing going on right now with us. Accountability versus it's somebody else causing this stress on my life. Meanwhile, we actually causing it ourselves based on what we believe, based on the words coming out of our mouth, causing us stress. Anything, if you look at all these boxes and think of the opposites, that's what's going on right now. We're literally trying to do the opposite of how we've been conducting ourselves all this time. Let me put it this way. Race is actually considered a swear word in our spaces. We don't allow race to come in our spaces. It's actually a policy in our organization that you use Caribbean, Canadian, and nothing else. Otherwise, we're going backwards. It's actually grounds for leaving the membership if you're using terms that are counterproductive. Any comments, Oliver?
None but ourselves can free our minds.
Right.
That came from Georgia. And Rexella says,
right.
Rexella says emancipation of mental slavery.
But you weren't listening. Bob was telling us from a long time. We weren't listening. We were only dancing. This is not new. What we're talking about today is not new. It's just we haven't put in the work. We literally haven't done it. All this stuff we kind of knew inside, right? Something wasn't right. I think Oliver said he wasn't comfortable with that term, but he still used it because everybody using it, and we know it's not right. You know, so if not now, when? If not you, who? And that's all I got, folks. That's the end of the workshop. Thank you for joining me on my journey. Oliver, can I ask you to put the feedback form in the chat box, please? Do you have that?
Yes.
It was on the Word doc, the Google Doc.
Yes, I got it.
Thank you. I would love to hear. You know, sometimes you kind of, you know, you don't really get the full thing unless you have an anonymous feedback form, right? So just give it to me on the feedback form. But I really appreciate everybody participating. I hope you learned something new. At the very least, I hope I've encouraged you to challenge everything that you thought was true or normal. you know, and I hope that I've encouraged you to level up. It's 21. Next level, Caribbean Canadian 2.0.
So please fill out the feedback form and just type in done in the chat when you are finished. This way we just want to make sure we all fill out the feedback form. Oh, Rexella, in the meantime,